So Unrivaled has confirmed Caitlin Clark will not be playing this season. Of course, Kelsey Plum has also backed out. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how the league does and whether they can succeed without Caitlin Clark. So far, no Sabrina Ionescu. So far, no Asia Wilson. And now, no Kelsey Plum. And I've talked about the dilemma for them where the players who drive the most interest are also the players who least need the league. And that will be fascinating to see unfold as this league continues to build. But according to the president of Unrivaled, some of this was not completely about Caitlin Clark, at least some of the moves and the news we heard from them, including the expansion of the roster where more spots were made available, which lets you know they have funding. They have this media rights deal, they have investors and backers, they have a sponsorship. So this is a league that plans to be here to stay. So to see what they do in the first season is going to be completely fascinating because we haven't seen the product yet. We don't know what the 3-on-3 is going to look like, what the presentation is going to look like. We also don't know how many people are going to watch. And does what they do in the first season do enough to, incentivize some of those big superstars, most notably Caitlin Clark, to come in? Alex Bazzell, who is the president, said that those roster spots were opened up not just for Caitlin Clark, not just on the hopes that Clark comes, but because they were able to get some of the backing and could bring in other players like Alyssa Thomas of the Connecticut Sun. Here were the comments he made. He was with Nafisa Collier on the Ringer WNBA show. As always, when I'm taking stuff from a podcast or a show, I will put the full link in the description. But this was the portion that I'm discussing.
That you guys were negotiating with Caitlin Clark. And right now, as of now, you still have 2 roster spots open, and you called them wild card spots. Like, I was just wondering if you guys could shed some light on what's going on there.
Sure. Yeah. So the way we, I know Fee announced that we were going from 30 roster spots to 36. And I think the thing we're most proud of is we put the league in a position financially to do those things. Like, because of it, we were able to then get AT involved, because originally she was going to go play overseas and then changed her mind. Is like, hey, I'm available. And we're like, well, we got to figure out a way for AT to play. Right. So people think it was like, let's make extra roster spots so we can give ourselves more time to recruit Caitlin. That's not entirely true. It was more about, we have players already ready to come in that we want to make sure that they're a part of this. Like, AT is a top 5 player in the world, like last 2 years, undisputed, first team All-W. So now at the same time, like, of course, I've been on record saying Caitlin will always have a spot in our league. And that is true, right? Like, we always want to be a home for the best of the best. She's also first team All-W. We went through our negotiations. Inevitably, she needed time this offseason, which we respect. So we hope to see her next year. She won't be playing this year.
So, look, I believe both of those things are true at the same time. I believe that they did get funding, which allowed them to open up more spots, because clearly they have. I mean, they announced a State Farm sponsorship. The games are going to be on TNT. You can think they're going to fail or not, but at least for the beginning, they clearly have gotten that backing. They have investors involved. So as far as that goes, I believe that premise that it wasn't just about Caitlin. It wasn't just about stalling for Caitlin to open future roster spots or more roster spots, because if you do look at the mission statement, in a sense, of the league, it is to offer an alternative to WNBA players from going overseas. So they don't have to go overseas to, if they don't want to subsidize their income or lack thereof from the WNBA, to also give them ownership stake in the league, to, make it more lucrative for them. So these are high-paying positions. A lot of women may be jumping at that idea, like, oh, I'm going to get that kind of paper in the off season. And we'll see what the eventual product looks like, because you don't know, I don't know, right? Like, I've been positive about it because I want it to succeed, because I think it's better for a lot of people if it succeeds. I think it's better for the consumer if it succeeds. And there are still a lot of hella good players in the league, like, Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier and Arike Gumbawale, right? So there are terrific players in the league as well. And if it proves itself, maybe then they do get the Caitlin Clarks and the Asia Wilsons and the Sabrina Ionescu's and the rest to sign up. Now, as far as Clark goes, I mean, he said it there, right? He said, we're keeping a spot open for her, which he said in the past. He's right. He said that in the past. So I think both things could be very true at the same time. One, they did have the wherewithal to get what they did from a funding standpoint, and that allowed them to offer spots to other players. And of course, you know, I saw backlash from people when Alyssa Thomas signed up, like, oh, now Caitlin's not going. Why wouldn't you bring Alyssa Thomas? I know she said the thing about Fever fans, and I did disagree with her lumping in all Fever fans. I don't think it was fair to lump in all Fever fans, but she's a good player. You can't argue with that. And why would the league not bring in a good player, right? And then when you, plus with a head of steam in 3-on-3, she could, you know, do some damage that way. At the same time, everybody knows, or else they're lying if they don't talk about the impact that Caitlin Clark would have from a bottom line standpoint, an interest standpoint, a popularity standpoint, any sort of standpoint for any business and any sports league, especially women's basketball. To not be aware of that is complete idiocy. So maybe the other part of that was, not only do we have the ability to now open up more spots, but this does buy us more time for Caitlin Clark. Because I'm sure in the process of that, when it appeared she initially said no, they're like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Because I promise you, the sponsors, the suits, all of those people were doing everything in their power to try to convince Caitlin Clark to do this. But Caitlin Clark had all the power in this situation. She had all the leverage in this situation. And I don't know what her ultimate decision-making process was like. I know a lot of fans thought it was, you know, part about, you know, the pettiness or whatever that she experienced. And this is a way to say, no, I'm not helping you now. I don't tend to think Caitlin's like that, but I do think Caitlin does use things as a chip on her shoulder. So I'm not saying she doesn't use that as fuel in some way. I do actually more buy the idea that, yo, I just went through a whole lot. Sorry, not right now. You know, especially after that. but you know, nothing personal to you, Unrivaled, right? But nah. After going from Iowa to the WNBA regular season and being the focus of everybody's conversation, I'm gonna take this long off season to get my mind, body, and soul right. But I believe what he said. I did, and as I've said, I'm to see something new like this get launched. Success, fail, we'll see. But I am going to be watching to see